My name is Harry Hartigan. I am on the board of directors for Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly. I'm also the liaison to Prime Timers Minneapolis and St. Paul. And Prime Timers is a gay and bisexual group for men 50 and older and their admirers. We right now have about 200 members here in the Twin Cities, and we're part of the worldwide organization for Prime Timers. So we've been around for 15 years. We're proud of the fact that we have done a lot to raise the issue of awareness for seniors and elders. So that's my role here tonight. And I'm going to give this over to LuAnne, who's going to do her part on Little Brothers.
I'm LuAnne Speeter. I'm the Director of Communications and Development, Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly. And I don't know if how many have heard of Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly? If you know anything about us, you know that our mission is very simple. And that mission is to alleviate loneliness and isolation among the elderly. Very simple. We do not charge for our services. What we do in terms of the programs we provide companionship. We go out and visit elders in their homes. We have activities, social activities. We also have holistic programming, and that is geared toward kind of celebrating the variety of elders that are out there in their all different kinds of skills and communication levels. But we recognize that a lot of times there are reasons that they are isolated and lonely. And what we do is we help to educate and provide referrals for elders so that they can become more independent and that they can age more successfully on their own, age in their own homes to the best of their ability. So those are some of the things that we provide. Just a little bit of background. Why is it that Harry and I are standing up here together? A couple years ago, Prime Timers knocked on our door and said we have some needs, and maybe Harry can explain this a little better than I do, but they had some needs within the Prime Timers community, and saw Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly as already having the network and the structure there, the infrastructure to be able to send out volunteers to provide that kind of companionship. So it was a great kind of union that we had of the two organizations, and then Prime Timers came to us a year ago and said there's a great grant opportunity through PFund. So this forum is actually one of those, one of the outcomes of that grant that we were able to receive. I don't know if anybody from PFund is Kayla here yet, but she will be coming, so hopefully I can introduce her later on and give her the thanks that are due to them. Should we start the film? All right. We'll sit back, and then the film is for about an hour. Feel free to, the restrooms, I should say, if you go out the door here, kind of toward the entrance and then turn right. The restrooms are right in that area. Feel free to get refreshments, but we will have a short break after this before we start our presentations. Thank you.
It's my job to introduce Jen Silent. It's a wonderful film that hasn't gotten much play. And one of the things, as I was thinking about this today, my father always said, there's certain things that you never talk about. One of those is religion, the other is politics, and then he said sex. You never talk about those things. And he missed one. It's aging. We need to raise the curtain on the aging issue because it's going to happen to all of us, whether we like it or not. And so Jen Silent addresses that in the LGBT community. And it's a fabulous documentary. And we're hoping that this sparks discussion tonight and starts us in the right direction in discussing aging within the LGBT community. So with that, without further ado, we're going to start the movie.
I do want to express my thanks again to PFund. And is Kayla here? I think she's out there eating. Okay. I'll introduce her later. But there is another distinguished person who is here. Paula Overby. Paula, can you stand up? Where is she? There she is, over there. She is running DFL candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, the U.S. House of Representatives. If she wins, she will be the first transgender member of the U.S. House of Representatives. So, thank you for coming, Paula. And then there is another person that I would like to point out, and that is Keva Yang, and she is way in the back. She is with PFund. It is because of PFund that we are all here tonight. We did receive the LGBT Aging Initiative grant from PFund. So thank you for this great opportunity for all of us to get together. Okay. Now what I'd like to do is next introduce our first speaker. And what we're going to be doing is having all 5 of the speakers come up. They're going to be speaking for about 15 minutes each, and they know that I'm going to get the cane out and yank them off if it's over that, because I do want to respect the length of the evening here. But and then what we're going to do though is just have the 5 presentations go straight through. And please hold your questions until the end, because what's going to happen, I think, is that you may have a question that might come out of one of the presentations, and it's very likely that that would be answered with one of the next presenters. So that's why we're going to be holding off until the end. So the first speaker is Leah Driscoll, and Leah is a program developer at the Amherst H. Foundation, where she is focused on home and community-based services for older adults and their caregivers. She's also the co-founder of Twin Cities Mobile Market and is on the board of directors for Training to Serve.
Thank you. All right. I like this crowd. Well, thank you, and thanks everyone for having me here tonight. I work for Wilder, which among many things provides 41 different direct service programs, including several for older adults. And we provide services that are kind of under the umbrella of home and community-based services. So helping people live in the community as long as possible and not have to move into a nursing home, hopefully. So those services include an adult day health services program, which we run all day from 6:30 in the morning until 5:30 in the evening. And it's a daytime alternative to nursing home placement. And we do everything from creative arts activities to on-site medical care to fitness activities and therapy and everything else. We also serve people with Alzheimer's disease and memory loss through that program. We also provide assisted living services to older adults living in St. Paul Public Housing. We have a Meals on Wheels program. We provide services for caregivers of older adults, and that could be a partner, a friend, a family member, a neighbor, anybody. And as we saw in the film tonight, often caregivers themselves need a lot of support in the process. And then, I'm missing one, Meals on Wheels, we do that as well. So, as they mentioned in the film, you never know who, you can't make assumptions about who you're serving, and you don't know how they identify or what their background is. And so what we've done at Wilder is to take some steps to be as open and affirming as possible. So some things we've done just at the organizational level is that, first of all, we're an open and affirming organization, and we have non-discriminatory hiring practices. We're very supportive of LGBT employees. We have an LGBT employee resource group, and really try to make a culture where people can really be themselves at work. And then we also, a few years ago, changed all of our client intake forms to not just have two check boxes that said male, female. We now have many check boxes, and then the bottom line that says other, and people can write in how they identify. And we've done that on all of our forums across the board, and that alone has been a really powerful change that we've seen people really start to open up to us, because right at the very beginning of receiving services, they've seen that we don't just automatically assume people fall into two categories. And then we also provided all of our staff from the top and the bottom with training. We brought in Training to Serve, where I also serve on the board, so it wasn't that hard. But Training to Serve is a nonprofit organization that provides education, tools, and resources to improve the quality of life of LGBT elders as they age. That's a brand new mission statement, so I had to read it. So we brought in Training to Serve, much to the thanks of a grant from PFund as well. We decided, hey, let's train others, because often in the human services field, you work across different organizations and you collaborate, and so we brought together 12 different aging services organizations to participate in training as well. And then what we're doing from there is coming together as a group to say, okay, now we've had this training, we've identified some next steps that we can take at our organizations. How can we sustain those changes? How can we continue to push each other to that next level, to make it more than just slapping a rainbow sticker on your laptop or your portfolio? Like, let's be authentic about this. So that work is just getting started, but it's exciting, and I think that a lot of this push needs to come from the field itself and from providers who are really committed to serving people the best they can, regardless of how they identify or because of how they identify. So I think I will leave it at that. I know that's not 15 minutes, but we'll allow more time for questions.
I didn't have to get out the cane. Okay, next we have Cathy Croghan. I think a lot of you already know Cathy. Cathy is a public health nurse with 20 years experience in public health management. She is co-author of the 2012 Twin Cities LGBT Aging Needs Assessment Survey Report. And she serves on a number of boards, including the American Society of Aging's LGBT Aging Issues Network Leadership Council, and she's on the board of Training to Serve. Yes.
Well, good evening, and thank you for the invitation to be here this evening, Prime Timers and Little Brothers. Thank you very much. This is a handout-heavy presentation. There's a yellow sheet being distributed right now, and after they distribute the yellow sheet, these great volunteers, and perhaps a couple more, will help distribute the new LGBT Aging Resource Guide. There are piles of them up here on the left. I only brought 125 of those, so would folks just take one? You can get more, but tonight it would be great if everyone could get one. So thank you. All right, I am a Minnesota public health nurse. I mostly focus on policy. Very few of you would really want my personal attentions if you had a health issue. I mostly talk about policy. I'm also a consultant and I'm a researcher. And tonight I have on a different hat. I have on my historian hat. And that is, I want to tell you that that is not incongruent with being a researcher, because you can't do relevant research if you don't know where you've been. And I do research on LGBT aging, a lot of it here in the Twin Cities. And you can't do that research if you don't know where the community's been. And so I'd like to just call your attention to the yellow sheet, and at the top, the side that says, where have we been and where are we going? And I would argue that we can't have a conversation if we don't know where we've been. We can't plan very well about where we're going. This is an extensive list. I don't expect anyone to read through it. I promise you I won't read through it. Aren't you happy? However, I would like you to take a look at the list, and what I really want you to see is the momentum that has been building. The first entry, a single entry, 1979, Affectional Preference and Aging Program, sponsored by the Minneapolis Gay Community Services Center. 1979. Are there people in the room who remember that program? Yes, okay. Okay, it was thin pickings then. Okay, 1991, we have the LGBT Aging Conference, which for those of you who might have been planners, and I think there are people in the room who were participated in planning that event, it got snowed out. Okay. But then as you just look at this, what you see is tremendous momentum building here in our community. And when you get to the late aughts, 2010, 2011, 2012, you really see there's a lot going on in LGBT aging. And that's very exciting. And it's very exciting that we're all here this evening talking about LGBT aging. I want to focus on, and I know the whole evening started late, so I'm going to try to cut my comments a little so that we can move things along and there'll be ample time for discussion at the end. But I want to focus you on what happened in 2013. In 2013, the Spirit on Lake housing opens, okay? That's a big deal. And that project started in a church discussion group at Spirit on Lake. I went to that discussion group. It later turned into GLBT Generations. Barbara Satin spearheaded that for how many years, Barbara?
It took 8 years.
It took longer than that.
The development itself took 8 years.
Yeah.
Planning for it.
Yeah. That's a big deal, and that opened in 2013. Also in 2013, Training to Serve, which you already heard a little bit about, and that I am tied to, I serve on the board, we trained over 3,500 service providers, senior service providers, by the close of 2013, primarily here in the Twin Cities. So we're talking about really bringing senior service providers up to speed for working with our community, working with older adults from the LGBT community. And lastly, I'd like to point out the just published 2014, the LGBT Aging Resource Guide, Twin City Metro. And I hope that everyone got a copy. Thank you. I could give you a special copy. Okay. Yes, I will autograph. Actually, we have several board members here. We'll talk about that, and they'll all autograph if you care for it. But what I want to point out about the resource guide, this is something that the community has talked about for a long time. We've done research over the years, and we know that our community is not confident that we will get high-quality services if service providers know who we are. In fact, our 2012 community survey of baby boomers and older showed that less than 1 in 5, less than 20% of our community believed they would get high-quality services if the service provider knew who they were, if the nursing home knew who they were, if the assisted living knew who they were, the home health care. Now, that may not be true, but it is how we perceive the world. We are not confident that service providers will provide high-quality care. Hence, the training is important. What we have here in the LGBT Aging Resource Guide is we're trying to close the gap. We're trying to provide information to the community, and in this case, 72 service providers indicated that they were LGBT welcoming. They wanted to be in this guide. 72. This is a maiden voyage, but they jumped in. So 72 service providers across 24 different service categories. And I just want to point out, because tonight's topic is isolation. Isolation comes from fear. And I already told you, our community isn't very confident that they will be well received if a service provider knows who they are. In this case, we have, and I'm focusing on isolation. In this guide, we have 10 service providers that indicate that they are interested in community and social activities. And a number of people in the audience, their organizations are listed here. And this includes the usual suspects, prime timers, OLOC, out to brunch. Okay, I mean, we all knew that they would show up. But it includes a whole lot of other folks as well. So pay attention to that. The other aspect of isolation is being able to go out and volunteer, get involved with the community. And this is where this guide gets really hot. These are the things that excite me. 24 organizations are listed in here as interested in having you as an LGBT community member come and volunteer with them. Go out there, get involved. You will be healthier if you go out and get involved. You'll help someone else, you'll help yourself. So that's what the resource guide is about. Just a couple more comments. I want to point you on page 33 of the resource guide. You will find a listing, page 32, a listing of some questions that you might ask of a service provider, things you might look for when visiting a service provider to indicate how welcoming they might be. On page 33, and this is where it really gets important, we are asking for your feedback because this is a maiden voyage and we know there are ways to improve this document. We hope to do it in the future and we can make it better if we get your feedback. We have a mechanism. We'd like you to provide feedback online, or if you want to send it in writing, you're welcome to do that. Lastly, this is being made available to the community with no charge. That doesn't mean it didn't cost something to develop it, but at no charge to community members. And we're able to do that because we received a grant from PFund and Greater Twin City United Way jointly put together a package of grants for LGBT aging issues, including the grant that brings us here this evening. So we were able to make this available for free because of that grant support, because of the people who advertised in this guide. So please look at who advertised and patronize them. And lastly, because of individual donors, such as many of you here in the audience, who support Training to Serve and therefore allowed us to put this out on the street. So I think that's everything. I do want to just call attention to, this is a special thanks from our board, and tonight we have 4 board members here. Barbara Satin, who I don't see right now, she was here just a moment ago. Barbara, okay, and Rebecca Heltzer, our chair. Hello, Rebecca, okay, and Leah, and I'm here. So the board sends a special thank you to all of our community supporters that made this possible. I'm going to turn it over now.
Thank you so much, Cathy. Next, we're going to hear from Jay Haapala. And Jay is the Associate State Director, Community Outreach for AARP. He is instrumental in partnership building and support of AARP's advocacy and education efforts so that those 50 and over can enjoy an increased quality of life. He also serves as a past president of the Minnesota Association for Volunteer Administration. Jay?
Thanks, LuAnne. Thanks, everybody. As LuAnne said, I'm Jay Haapala, Associate State Director for Community Outreach with AARP Minnesota. And our mission is to enhance quality of life for us all as we age. And at this point in my introduction of AARP, I usually talk about quality of life as it relates to financial security, as it relates to health care. But tonight we're talking about dignity. We're talking about dignity as it relates to quality of life. And if someone doesn't have dignity, those higher level quality of life issues don't seem as important. And that's why this isolation issue and discrimination is about social justice, and it's about fairness, and it's about inclusivity in our society, and that's why it's so important to AARP. At AARP, we believe that age and race and gender and sexual orientation and gender identities shouldn't be a barrier to real possibilities for people as they age. And so we work hard to be inclusive and to make sure that all of our 37 million members across the U.S. are represented and have a voice, have a collective voice. We work for positive social change and engage and provide services to our members, including the LGBT community. And we recognize that, like in the video we watched, it's not okay just to have a one-size-fits-all approach to the way we engage with our members. So through our National Policy Council and through our membership, we're just very interested in hearing from individuals and from communities and to hear what matters to you. So I just want to talk about some research that AARP has done into isolation as an issue and its causes. We call it the isolation framework. So I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk about some of the innovative approaches that we have taken and other agencies and organizations are taking to address isolation. Just some quick statistics. People are living alone more than they used to. And that's just a trend in our society. People are living alone, they're bowling alone, like I was having a conversation with one of you about tonight. It's just that is changing, and that means that more of us are at risk of being isolated. People have fewer close friends. One interesting fact I found out about that trend in moving in the past 10 years from having 3 close friends to 2 close friends, while the number of people who have 0 close friends has risen from 10% to 25% of people. 25% of people have 0 close friends, and it's growing. Causes of isolation: living alone, impaired mobility, life transition, a death in the family, a divorce. These contribute to isolation. People who are of low income and low means, folks who are living in rural areas, speaking a language other than English, being of a minority group, and specifically being an LGBTQ individual. That is called out specifically as being a risk factor for isolation in our research. And there is a link to isolation and health. People have worse health outcomes when they're isolated from other people, and it's not just the serious health impacts. It's not just not having enough food to eat or someone to go to the grocery store and take you to the medical appointment. It's heart disease, it's diabetes, it is slips and falls and accidents. It's all of these health factors that are exacerbated because of isolation. And you heard the gentleman in Gen Silent talk about taking his own life because he was so isolated, not as a person with serious health, other than mental health. I don't mean to disrespect the importance of mental health, but he talked about suicide as an option for him once his partner passed. Family caregiving in itself is isolating. He's spending his days at the nursing home, and he's isolated from others because it's mentally stressful and because of the physical time it takes. In the video, they didn't talk a lot about, how do those folks go about their daily lives and taking care of the other things that we need to do at the same time that we're taking care of a spouse, at the same time we're taking care of a loved one. They're still going to work, they're still paying the bills, they're still doing the laundry, they're still doing, those caregivers still have a lot of other responsibilities. So some LGBT specific issues, and others have referred to this, but just the likelihood to live alone is 2 times that of a heterosexual person. The likelihood of having children to take care of them when they are aging and need help is 4 times less likely. These are exacerbated by the culture. And just the definition of being forced to live in the closet is isolating in itself. That's what it is. It's that people can't be their true selves to their community, and it's isolating. The issue of aging programs and services, and Cathy talked about this, aging programs and services not being culturally sensitive and simply prepared to help diverse people is important. The perception is important. And I think we have a responsibility for those agencies to be doing the outreach, to be doing the, certainly the training, but to be doing the outreach and saying not just we're inclusive, but here's what we specifically do for members of different communities. So on to just some of the innovative solutions that, one, our research shows, and two, that our AARP Foundation has been funding. One great partnership that we have here in the Twin Cities with Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly, Lutheran Social Services, whose building we're in, and the Prime Timers, is a partnership with Little Free Libraries. And the concept here is that by installing little free libraries in neighborhoods where there are elders, where there are people who are isolated, it brings the neighbors together. People get to know each other, and if a person needs a hand shoveling the sidewalk, they're going to be more likely to get that. Who here doesn't know what a little free library is? All right. So it's like a big birdhouse that you put out on your sidewalk and stock it with books, and then the neighbors, it's free. Come take a book, leave a book, get to know your neighbors while you're at it. So it's an innovative way that we can just create community for people. Others we've heard about, creative arts programs, but health-centered programs. So the trend for better wellness, I think, is a way that people can connect as part of a community. I know of some pilot projects here, community-based, with the Vital Aging Network, bringing people together around aging and health issues, and that can reduce isolation. You saw the man in the movie who was going to the social lunches. He was going to the poetry readings and so forth, and that having that kind of community is worthwhile, and it's not just recreation. It's quality of life. It's saving people's lives to have these type of programs. So a few points to wrap up. AARP, through the state office, we're really engaged in state advocacy right now, and we're very much focused on family caregiving and policies for family caregivers, work-life balance in the workplace, so enhancing sick leave and family medical leave. Last year we already expanded the definition of family members. One is legally allowed to use their sick time to care for, and this year we want to get sick leave for all workers in Minnesota so that they can use it to take care of their families. Others have to do with a protected class of caregivers so that family caregivers can't be discriminated against in employment. So if you're interested in more information, you could, or to get engaged in that advocacy work, you can certainly talk to me or our volunteers who have disappeared, but it's Steve, Debbie, and Claire over here, our AARP volunteers engaged in advocacy. And I just want to give another shout out to the Prime Timers and Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly for bringing AARP to Twin Cities Pride Festival. Last year we hosted for the first time Boomer Town at the Pride Festival. In the movie we saw the women in the Pride Festival saying, they don't know, why don't they know us? We've been in the movement for 50 years, why don't they know us? Well, at Pride we want seniors to have a presence and older adults to have a presence and to join us at Boomertown. So if your agency reps here tonight, sign up for Pride and join us in Boomertown, and if you're just a festival goer, come and party with us and once the sun comes out in June. All right, so thanks.
Great, thank you, Jay. And I'm glad you brought up legal because that's the direction we're going to take right now. We're now going to hear from Tara Patet. Tara is a senior prosecutor with the St. Paul City Attorney's Office, and she's got to focus on elder and vulnerable adult abuse. She's also a trainer for the Department of Justice, teaching police officers, prosecutors, and social service providers across the country how to effectively intervene when elder abuse occurs. Tara is active with Minnesota Vulnerable Adult Justice Project and serves as chair of the Criminal Code Subcommittee. She's also on the board of Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly. Thank you, Tara.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm not very good with microphones. Usually we have a little clip thing. So if you can't hear me, tell me to put it up by my mouth and I will. I've been prosecuting for, this is my 19th year now. And, oh, okay, thank you. See? I do respond well. I don't know if I can. That's okay. I got it. I got it. Everybody else did it. I think I can do it.
Okay, all right, but it might just fit right in there, and then you could just kind of lean into it.
I'm good. Okay. When I tell people that I am an elder abuse prosecutor, people typically say, "Oh, well, you must spend a lot of time in nursing homes," and I really don't. The reality is that 96% of elder abuse occurs in home settings. And I think most people are surprised by that because the media tends to focus on abuse that occurs in facilities. The media tends to focus on scams and stranger kinds of incidents and stranger crimes, but the reality is that, again, 96% of the elder abuse that we see is happening in private homes. And so that really is an indicator of where we need to shift our focus and our efforts. The other surprising statistic in this field is that the staggeringly low reporting rate for elder abuse. One of 23 every 23 cases of elder abuse that is occurring, only one is being reported. And that's really significant. It has the lowest reporting rate of any crime across the board. And what we know is that in the LGBT community, that reporting rate is significantly lower even than that. So that is a very alarming statistic. I've been doing this specifically elder abuse and vulnerable adult abuse for the last 7 years of my career. Prior to that, I did mostly domestic violence and child abuse. And I have never had a self-reported case of elder abuse come across my desk. Every case I've ever had is a community member or a service provider or someone else seeing signs of elder abuse and reporting it. So I think that is really an indicator to all of us in the community that we need to be the eyes and the ears for this community, because these are not cases that are being reported by the victims themselves. We know that the biggest risk factor for elder abuse is isolation, what we're talking about today. It's both a symptom of elder abuse and a sign. So you take that higher vulnerability of the LGBT community and the lower reporting rate in the LGBT community, and you have a recipe for disaster. And it really is something that we all need to be aware of and just have our eyes and ears open. So when you think about elder abuse, what are we talking about here? What is elder abuse? Elder abuse has many different forms. It can be the kind of typical thing that we think of with battering, assault type of behavior, but that can also include with the aging community, force feeding, restraining people unlawfully, punishing people who are in vulnerable positions or who are in facility situations. It can include sexual assault, sexual abuse, which is any non-consensual sexual contact. And when you think about what's consensual contact, in order to consent to a sexual act, someone has to have the capacity to be able to consent. And so when we have people who are maybe have Alzheimer's or other type of cognitive impairment, they simply don't have the ability to consent. So I'm sure you've all heard in the media, you couldn't hardly miss it, the relatively recent case of an elderly woman being sexually assaulted in her facility setting. What I often see in those cases is people coming with a defense of, well, he or she consented to what was happening, and across the board we know that most of the time that just isn't true. Certainly older adults are able to consent to sexual activity, but oftentimes there's a capacity issue with that. Emotional and psychological abuse, while that's not really criminal necessarily, it's very, very prevalent and is often a gateway to other forms of abuse that we see. Neglect is another big one. You may recall just a couple of years ago, Minnesota finally, after many, many years, got a felony level neglect statute. Prior to that, you could neglect someone that was in your care, even to the point of death, and under the law, it was only ever considered a gross misdemeanor, so maximum penalty was a year in jail. And as I was part of that effort, as were a few of the people in the room here, and We were seeing cases where people were dying at the hands of their caregivers in horrific situations, and courts sentencing them as the same as they would a speeding ticket, $50 fine, things like that. It was absolutely atrocious. And so it's, we're raising awareness is one of the ways that we get these major changes made and get this sort of recognized as a really serious problem in our community. It's unusual for a prosecutor to be out sort of drumming up business. Usually we don't have a high need for more cases, but it troubles me when I don't get a lot of cases. When my numbers are down, that's not a sign that, okay, we're solving this elder abuse problem. That's not it at all. It's because we're just not, people aren't reporting. There aren't people out watching out for their family members and loved ones and friends, and that's a real problem. So, in general, obviously, LGBT elders are experiencing the same types of abuse as the general population, but there are certain things in the dynamics of the relationships that some people in the LGBT community are involved in that make them particularly vulnerable to isolation and to abuse. And some of the dynamics that happen between batterers or abusers and their LGBT victims that make those cases unique. One is the threat of outing a person who is a member of the LGBT community. Obviously, many people, if you are elderly and in the LGBT community, you grew up at a time, you came of age at a time where it was not only difficult but sometimes dangerous to come out. So that threat can be very real, and we see that dynamic being played out where there's a threat by the batterer to isolate and say, well, gosh, if you tell anybody what's going on, I'm going to out you to your family, or I'm going to out you to other members of the community. Another is convincing the victim that he or she nobody's going to believe what you have to say. If I out you to other people, nobody's going to believe what you have to say. That's something that I've actually seen in a couple of my cases where the person just never reported. They just thought, well, nobody's going to believe me. And if the person has experienced during their lifetime discrimination based on their sexual orientation, that's a real fear. And I mean discrimination or on the part of law enforcement or other social service providers. That can be a real powerful dynamic in these cases as well that keeps these victims from coming forward with the fact that they're being abused. The biggest thing, I think, is the isolation factor. What we know is that abusers and batterers look for people, and exploiters are looking for people who are isolated and vulnerable, and they prey on those people. That's the one form of elder abuse that I think I forgot to mention is financial exploitation, and that's huge. That's a really big part of the work that I do and the work that we all do. And the co-occurrence of these different types of abuse is 80%. Statistically, it's 80%. So when I'm prosecuting a case of neglect, the chance of there being other forms of abuse occurring are 80%. So almost always, if we look for it, we'll find it. The biggest financial exploitation case I ever prosecuted was close to $1 million. Actually, it was a retired school teacher, believe it or not, who had amassed a pretty significant fortune by being extremely frugal through the years. And it came to my attention as a neglect case where one of her family members had moved in with her and promised to care for her and simply wanted the money more than to be able to care for his relative. And she ended up dying in just absolutely deplorable conditions that you can't imagine. And as part of that, he isolated. She started as a very vibrant, active, social woman in her 70s, and fast forward 10 years, and she was just nothing like her friends had ever seen her. And it was because of that isolation. So that came to me as a neglect case, and then we learned as I was preparing the case for trial, I'm thinking, what's the motivation here? What's the motive? And as we started it didn't take very long to start looking at bank accounts and things like that, and I got it, okay. So, we are always looking for the co-occurrence of these different types of abuse. So that's very dismal, I know, but unfortunately, that's the kind of the world in which I operate, at least in my professional life. But I want to talk a little bit about the things that we can do, the things that you can do for yourselves, and the things that you can do for your loved ones that can to help protect. Obviously, the one that's been, I think, the recurring theme is get involved, stay involved. I think many of us, as we age, sort of passively accept this shrinking social circle, and you don't really realize that you're isolated until you're completely alone. And that is the stereotypic victim that I see in the cases that I prosecute. It is almost always someone who at one point in their life was working, had coworkers and friends and a large social circle, and all of a sudden, or well, not all of a sudden, but gradually they become isolated, and then they become very, very vulnerable. I've had cases where people were victims. Not only do they not report being victimized or exploited, but they're actually uncooperative with prosecution. A case I had just last year was an elderly gentleman who had lost his partner about 15 years earlier and had gradually gotten to the point where he was completely alone. And he was befriended by a young woman who lived in his same apartment complex. I hate that when they combine sometimes lower income with vulnerable elder adults. It just seems often you have young people and elderly people who are vulnerable, and sometimes it's a recipe for difficulty. In any event, this woman had befriended him, and she was just taking money from him every single day, hundreds of dollars. He had a fair amount of money, but she was taking money from him every day and providing some companionship. She'd come and sit with him for maybe 10 minutes, and then she'd say, all right, I want $100, I'm going out tonight. I want you to give me the keys to your car, and that kind of thing. And that went on for a very long time until a police officer who was just happened to be real actively involved in the local community noticed what was going on and started watching over him. But when I interviewed him, he was very matter of fact. He said, yeah, I know she's doing this. I wish she wouldn't do it, but it kind of become a cost-benefit analysis for him, and it was worth it for him to have the companionship, even though it meant being exploited. So once we were able to hook him up with healthy alternative social circles, we were able to successfully go forward with prosecution in that case. So being actively involved and avoiding that isolation piece before you become completely alone is easy to say, I know, but very, very important. Also, don't give other people access to your finances. Now, in the wake of the whole Target incident, we all actually know that, but as we age, it becomes a convenience factor. And it's just, it's easy to put somebody else on your bank account. There are laws in Minnesota that really make that difficult for someone if you give someone access to your bank account as a co-signer on your bank accounts. So it's really important to avoid doing that. I know that I think it's the AARP website has some videos and other materials for finding a financial planner for elders. Are you familiar with that at all? Okay. And that may be in some of the materials that are available here tonight. If not, I can get people a link for that. But that is really important. Plan for incapacity. Know that at some point it's very likely, if you live a long life, that you very well may not be able to handle your own finances. Plan for that, and don't just leave, as a matter of convenience, someone that you're not entirely trusting to take care of your finances. Just a couple more things. Thoroughly screen your caregivers. In Minnesota, PCAs are not required to be licensed. This is a very big source of cases, a very large source of cases that I have is from paid PCAs, personal care attendants, abusing and exploiting people that are in their care and neglecting people that are in their care. And sometimes it's just because the person didn't take the time to do a criminal background check, didn't take the time to thoroughly check references, or just really be sure that this is a person that they wanted to be providing daily care. So that can be an area of exploitation. If you do live in a facility, know your rights. In Minnesota, we actually have pretty good protection for residents in nursing home facilities and other facilities. And everybody has available to them an ombudsman, which is a person, an advocate who can help you assert your rights. That's someone that everyone who lives in a nursing home facility has access to. In terms of protecting your loved ones, and I'll wrap things up right now, the big one, when I think of some of the bigger cases that I've had, the case that I referred to with earlier with the elderly aunt, she, as I said earlier, was a very vibrant and social woman, and went to Bridge Club every week and was had lots of friends. And she started, when this nephew moved in with her and had her sign a power of attorney, I'm going to start on that. We could have a whole nother, if we have another 3 hours, we'll talk about power of attorney. But she started just saying, no, I think I'm not going to come this week. And that just got more and more and more over the course of about a year. And finally her friend said, wait a minute, this isn't right. And they forced their way essentially to her house. And when they found her, she looked nothing like the person that they had known just a year ago. So don't take no for an answer. If somebody that you know used to be social and all of a sudden is withdrawing, that can be a sign of depression, of course, but it can also be a sign of elder abuse. So again, being the eyes and ears for this community is really how we're going to successfully intervene in these kinds of cases. And lastly, if you know the signs of elder abuse, and I have a handout here that if anyone, and again, if I had more time, we could talk a little bit about what that looks like when somebody's being abused or neglected, some of them not so obvious signs. Know what those are, and if you see them, report it. There's a common entry point, meaning a common phone line that you can call to report elder abuse. You can do it anonymously, you can do it any way you want, or simply say, I'll go along with you if somebody seems a little bit willing to go and talk to law enforcement or a doctor or any kind of care provider. I'll go with you. Let's figure this out. So with that, I'm probably over, but thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Next, we're going to have a representative from the medical community give that perspective. Dr. Julie Switzer. Dr. Julie is the Director of Geriatric Orthopedic Trauma at Regents Hospital and an Assistant Professor of Orthopedic Surgery at the University of Minnesota. She has served on the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons Women's Health Issues Advisory Board, is a past president of the Minnesota Orthopedic Society, and has published numerous articles on geriatric trauma. So, Dr. Julie.
Thank you. Thank you. So let me just say what a privilege it is to be here tonight. Thank you very much for having me. It was wonderful to hear the previous speakers, and the film was so moving. And I won't take too much of your time. I'm a care provider primarily. I'm a researcher as well, and my focus in my practice and in my research is primarily fracture care in the elderly. And I'll tell you a little bit about my specific practice and program, but I'll also just say that there are providers out there who really care and who want to know you and who want to care for you. And so I feel really positive about that and optimistic. And the thing I'm most chagrined about is that I brought no cards, unfortunately, tonight. But you can surely find me on the internet or give me a call. Our program, which was founded in 2003, is a three-pronged program. And just briefly, at Regents Hospital, we try to provide the best care for older folks who've sustained a fracture. That's one part of it. A second part is that as orthopedic surgeons, it turns out that we really have an opportunity that other care providers may not have for preventing fractures. I actually wrote a most recent review article in the orthopedic literature on elder abuse. But also, when you sustain a fracture, well, let me back up. What do you think is the greatest predictor for sustaining a fracture? It's not osteoporosis.
Isolation.
It's not isolation, but it's actually having sustained a previous fracture. So it turns out that as an orthopedic surgeon, the folks we see in our clinics are the folks who are going to break again, unless maybe there's something we can do about that. And it turns out we can do some things about that. So a lot of my work is involved in bone health care and osteoporosis treatment and evaluation for things like vitamin D deficiency and nutritional deficiencies. So we have an opportunity as orthopedic surgeons to promote and provide better bone health care for folks who fracture and also their families. Because here's another fact. At what age do you think after which you produce no more bone? Like, when do you stop making bone? Yeah, it's like 25, maybe 30 if you're lucky. Yeah, decades ago. So it turns out that unfortunately after about the age of 30, all we're trying to do is decrease the rate of bone loss. And if someone comes to me and they're in their 70s and they come with their son or daughter, I have an opportunity maybe to talk with the family member about the importance of bone health, osteoporosis treatment, and even the granddaughter or grandson, because really it's the time in our teens and early 20s when we're making the most bone, putting the bone in the bank. And then the final part of our program, which is perhaps most salient tonight, is that we have the only mobile outreach elder fracture care program in the country. What that means is that we liaison with over 130 healthcare nursing care facilities in the community, so that if there is an orthopedic related question, a fracture, a question of a fracture, someone who needs post-op care, someone who needs post-fracture care, either I or usually a nurse practitioner who works closely with me goes out to that care facility or to a person's home and provides on-site care. What that means is that the hardship, expense, time that it may take for an older person to come into our clinic or to come into the emergency room, we obviate that and we provide care on site. And we are really committed in that program and in the other parts of our program to providing care that's focused on dignity, on meeting people where they are in their homes and in their lives, and trying to promote their health and wellness. I could say a lot of other things, but mostly I'd like to cede the microphone to the other participants tonight, and I'm really, again, happy to be here and welcome any questions that you might have. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Harry.
If you ever need surgery, she's the lady. Trust me. I'm a testament to it. She's the greatest surgeon that you'll ever meet. Thanks, Julie. Her clinic truly does treat everyone with dignity and respect, and that's a major, major thing for all of us in the LGBT community, so it's a wonderful thing to have. And now we're going to open the floor for questions. So, questions, I'm going to give the microphone to you.
Okay, so one of the questions that I have is one of the things that was mentioned in the movie where they had the CEO or manager of a healthcare provider, or I guess senior care provider, who talked about as they were bringing in the training to try to get their staff to understand the needs of the LGBT community and aging issues, and that they had issues with some of their employees that tried to cite their religious beliefs as excuses or reasons to not want to take care of LGBT people or to accord them the respect that they should be showing. And I guess in terms of the training that you've experienced or done with senior facilities, you know, how have you dealt with that type of an issue? Especially in light of what happened in Arizona and this, you know, wild law about protecting religious freedom.
Who wants to take it?
Split the difference here. That's a great question. Kathy does a lot more training for Training to Serve than I do, so I will hand this off to her shortly. But what I appreciate being on the service provider side of that training is that it's meeting people where they're at and knowing that, unfortunately, we're not necessarily going to change their belief system. But regardless, everyone deserves to be treated warmly and lovingly and with the dignity and respect that they need and deserve. And so, we definitely had among our staff a couple people that were like, well, I'm not sure how I feel about this, but then after the training, we're like, yes, this makes perfect sense. I totally get it. So.
When we do training, one of the things we emphasize, and we put it right up at the front end of the training, because we understand there are people in the room who aren't going to be real excited about talking about sexual orientation or gender ID for personal reasons. This isn't a happy moment for them, but they're at training. And so we really try to put it in the perspective of, you're there as a professional. And from a professional, your professionalism as a provider really requires you to provide the highest quality services for all of your clients. And it really doesn't matter what you think about them, you're still obligated to provide high quality services. That's how we start our training. And we say, we're not here to change your beliefs about sexual orientation or gender ID. To be truthful, I believe the more people know about any subject, the other, the thing that you're afraid of, the more you learn about it, you actually do change your attitudes. But we really start out by saying, we're not here to change your attitudes, we're here to provide you with skills so that you can provide the highest quality services, professional services to your clients, all of them.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks. Any other questions?
I would be goodbye. Two questions, two different kinds of things. For those of you who are providers and on the panel, what are you doing to, if you have this, what are you doing about looking at the issues of Alzheimer's in the LGBT community? And because that is one of the growing kind of death sentences, so to speak, and there really needs to be some work done there. Secondly, as I think about how I got here, I realized through all of the ways in which I get information, none of them from my communities of color had anything about this program. So I'm just wondering, where you're doing some of your marketing to get this information to communities of color, your individual organizations, and then when we look at, this particular grant, what is it doing to reach out to communities of color?
I could say a few things. Thanks for those good questions. And these are just some brief points, but hopefully it helps. One on those caregiving bills and issues that we're working on. The Alzheimer's Association is a partner in our coalition to get those passed because family caregivers are so important to people who are living with Alzheimer's and being treated and need a lot of support from their families. So we're fully partnered on advocating for those bills. And I could just speak for AARP and say that we're focused on the individuality of the LGBT communities. We're also very serious about connecting with multicultural communities and being available specifically, being relevant specifically to everyone in individualized ways. And we focus a lot of our efforts in ethnic communities.
In regard to your first point about the LGBT community and Alzheimer's. One thing I'll say is that it turns out that, at least I know in the orthopedic literature and community, there is very little data on the frail elderly. So it turns out that, let's say you have a hip fracture, and we know about what that means and how you do. Well, if you were one of those patients, you had to be mobile enough to come back to the clinic, to fill out the form, to get your x-ray, to do this sort of thing. And that's probably only 40% of the population, maybe, who sustain a hip fracture. And there's a huge proportion of folks who sustain not only hip fractures, obviously, but vertebral compression fractures, ankle fractures, wrist fractures, who are really frail, have dementia, and aren't able to participate in the, participate in providing data so that we have a better understanding of who they are and what works for them and what we can do for them. And that's one of my real passions and interests, is understanding better how we can care for folks who are under the radar, unfortunately.
With regard to the part of your question on Alzheimer's, I just want to add in that there's a statewide initiative. It's Preparing Minnesota for Alzheimer's, and it's a statewide initiative. And the LGBT community was specifically sought in the planning phase of that to be at the table. And I thought that that was a very good sign. That invitation was there, and we did participate and continue to participate. So I think that's, just sort of covering the circle on Alzheimer's. And I think Leah has something additional.
Well, I think there's more work to be done in engaging communities of color. I don't know that we've adequately addressed that question. Just from Wilder's service perspective, we provide services to people with Alzheimer's. Over half of them are members of communities of color. And then we also support their caregivers, their family members. And we are doing more now to look at, because friend and family caregivers of people with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia really do need a lot of support. And I think we have to get more creative about the ways that we think of that support, and not just direct service, but how can we convene more informal communities to come together and really support the couple. So I don't know that we fully answered your question, but that's my stab at it.
And just one of the things about diversity, she's absolutely right. We need better ways to communicate with the different cultures and communities. We tried to reach out. We had the Star Tribune did an article 2 days ago about this particular event. We tried to get Lavender to cover it. They had a little blurb in there, but there's a lot of work to be done. And I think we had a pretty extensive outreach to as many people as we could think of. So we did try.
I don't think I need that either.
You just want to see me work, don't you?
Okay. I'm just going to make this short. My name is June Remus. I am the transgender coordinator at All God's Children's Church. We are an all-inclusive group. Last year we were part of PFund's survey, and we worked with a lot of people. I met with a lot of nursing home administrators, hospitals that were really, really receptive to working in a better way with LGBT people that come into the nursing homes. But you have to be honest with them. You have to come in and tell them, I'm here. I want to know what you're going to do for me. And if you're not going to do anything for me, I'll find somewhere else. You're not forced to go there. You can go anywhere you want. As far as communications between people of color, it's always been difficult. And it's not getting any better. I did get the article out of the paper yesterday, and I did call this young lady over here, and came down today. I wanted to see what was going on with aging, because I'm aging. I'll soon be 70, and I want to know what's going to happen. They ain't looking too good either. But, I've been to several major hospitals here, and they've been very, very influential, very, very cordial in dealing with the trans people that come into their hospital. I know of 3 nursing homes here, major nursing homes, that are exceptional when they come to dealing with transgenders or gay and lesbian people that come in. I personally set them down, just to make sure that they knew what I was looking for. I have walked 4 people in the last year to the grave. They were all transgenders, they were all in nursing homes here, they were treated well, because they had to deal with me. But they were treated well. I made regular calls to them. My church had deacons that went out there on a regular basis to see them, see what their needs were. I think we've added to it, but we need to add a little bit more to it. I am now encumbered by things that I'm doing in my church that I can't do in the outside. I am with Can Do, which is another Southside agency that's interested in dealing with the gay community. And so they got me on their board, so I can try to find some people that want to join and help out and just move this movement forward and see if we can get a little better acceptance. And that's what we need, is that acceptance. I don't want to change for anybody, but I want them to leave me alone and let me live. That's all.
Thank you. My question is for Tara. I thank you for bringing our attention to elder abuse, and you said one of the prime sources is isolation, that one of the symptoms that kind of leads to that. My question is a broader one. Have you ever prosecuted nonprofits or organizations that have gone after elders that seeking their resources, kind of like not letting them alone, constantly harassing them for more donations, more economic help, knowing their resources are plentiful? Is that also abuse?
It is sure, it's a form of, it's a form of exploitation, to be sure. Those kinds of cases are typically handled at the federal level. Some state prosecution, it is rare. It is very, very rare. I don't handle that kind of crime, that sort of scam and business law kind of crime. So I can't answer your question probably as well as you'd like. But it's not done as often as it really ought to be. It's difficult to prosecute while it is legally possible in Minnesota to prosecute a corporation, it's very, very difficult because of the level of proof and the level of intent and knowledge that's required of the people who are running the organization. Oftentimes what we're doing is going after the individuals who are individually targeting particular people because of certain vulnerabilities.
Harry? I hear a voice.
Well, that's a great question, and when we talked about the underreported crimes of elder abuse, scams and those type of high pressure sales techniques are underreported too. So 2 things. One, we all need to know that when you get your email scams, when you experience the high pressure sales techniques, we have to report those things so that our politicians and leaders know how common, for older adults especially, once they get on these call lists, they're called multiple times a day. They don't quit. And the scams are real and they're underreported, so we have to report them to the Attorney General's office, and we have to report them to the Department of Commerce. And you can join AARP's Fraud Watch Network online if you just Google Fraud Watch Network, and you get periodic alerts about the latest scams and crimes that these criminals are trying to perpetrate.
Thanks.
Just one more question.
One day.
A couple, that's fine.
I'm Joanne Usher, and I'm the Executive Director of Rainbow Health Initiative, and we collect LGBTQ health data every year. And one of the statistics we know is that we are not out to our doctors. So if you are isolated or if you are looking for care and you are not out to your doctor, they can't provide the care that you need. So I encourage you to be out to your doctor. The other thing that we have is a resource directory online of LGBTQ friendly providers. So if you have a provider that is very good, encourage them to get on our provider directory. If you're looking for a provider who is LGBTQ friendly and or competent, check out our website and look for a provider there.
What was your group?
Rainbow Health Initiative. I have business cards.
Hi, I just wanted to share a little experience. I live in public housing. I've lived there about 7 years. It's a senior building. And until tonight, when I came in here, I realized that I had self-isolated spontaneously, for lack of a better word, because this is the most gay people I've been with in the same room in 6 years. Just because of the nature of being ill, being older, and that kind of thing. So it creeps up on you, it's kind of insidious. And as I say, I just had that today. I am very sick. I have lots of stuff going on. So that takes priority, whether I like to or not. If you can't get out of bed, the day is kind of shot. So that's just me. I don't belong to any group, I'm just me. But I did want to, coming out to your doctor, I went to the senior clinic at HCMC when I was turned 62, and the question came up. And the doctor said to me, well, do you have sex with men? And I said, well, not enough. But I digress. And I did do that. That is not, I did do that. He appreciated it. I appreciated it. He didn't fix that.
Thank you. By the way, Prime Timers would welcome you, and Prime Timers has a scholarship fund available.
Well, I joined in January too. I just.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I'm doing stuff.
Hi. I was wondering when an organization gets put on a list of being LGBT friendly, how do we know that they walk the walk? I'm thinking of HRC for corporations has their equality index, and coming from a Fortune 500 company, I know they take those very seriously, and I know my company always sweated it out when the report cards came, and just when we thought we were meeting the mark, they always raised the bar. I was wondering, is there anything like that for service providers so we don't get groups selling us a false bill of goods when we're looking for a true and honorable provider?
Thanks.
In this particular guide, the providers that are listed here are self-selecting. So we put this out and we spent 6 months recruiting. We put this out and although they did answer a number of questions about their policies and staff training, etc., we relied on their self-report that they were LGBT welcoming. If you look at the introduction in this, we encourage people not to, that we are not personally, as an organization, endorsing these, but that, and we explain how these organizations, why they're listed. We also provide a list of questions that you, as any kind of consumer, whatever it is you're purchasing, if it's a new car or whatever, that you want to go in as an informed consumer with your good list of questions. And this has, I think, some information. It has that kind of information in it. I think that your question though about would you raise the bar? And other groups have done this. And do people, we were referring here to the HRC, pardon?
Human Rights Commission.
Yes, the Human Rights Commission has for health centers, and we have several here in the Twin Cities that have their endorsement. They have a number of criteria, and they have increased the level, they've raised the bar over the years. And we've talked about that with this particular document, that you start, your circle, and then you start to raise the bar. But in this initial voyage, these are self-selecting.
And I would say that Rainbow Health is also self-selecting. However, within the next couple of months, our website will add 2 components to it. And one is an opportunity for people to comment on providers' care on the site, and a rating system for whether they have gotten training from Training to Serve, or taken our cultural competency training or other competency trainings that are available. So that'll be in addition to our site as well.
I just wanted to point out that Rainbow Health Initiative has a directory. It's an online directory. It's a healthcare service provider directory. Is that right?
Yes.
And I just wanted to point out that that's different. This is senior services, and it doesn't have individual providers in it unless the person is a sole practitioner and applied. So this is not about, like, you wouldn't find a geriatrician in this guide. You would find senior housing, like you'd find a nursing home or a home care providing company. But this does not call out individuals, it calls out individual providing organizations.
Thanks, Cathy.
Thank you.
Last question.
We're running out of time.
Just one more question.
One more question.
Not exactly a question, just to let you know that in the last year, my ex-partner died, and we founded a scholarship for seniors. It's called the Lyle Rossman Memorial LGBT Scholarship. It's administered through PFund, and first awards are going to be given this year. The date for people to submit is passed. It's February the 1st. We raised about $6,500 so that we can give a scholarship every year for someone who wants to go to school, wants to go to elder hospital, maybe they're still working and they need courses, anything that's educational that's available to you through PFund.
Would they contact you then, Molly?
Sure,
PFund?
they want to.
Okay.
And Kava Yang.
Kava, is she still here?
Probably.
Okay, that would be
I think she's doing a
PFund,
scholarship.
yeah. Kava is the program officer.
If you have questions that you think about later, send them to LuAnne at Little Brothers, and we'll get them answered for you. This was not about having all the answers. This was raising the curtain, getting a view into elder and senior issues. And there's a lot to be done. I'd like to thank LuAnne for all her work. She did a major part of this. PFund for their support. Dr. Julie Switzer. The whole panel, did an incredible job. And this was put together a while ago. We have a lot to learn. People of color, we have a lot to learn. Trust me. And we need all the help we can get. One of the things LuAnne and I recently talked about was a consortium of groups that work together in the GLBT elder issues areas. So there's a lot to be done yet, but this is just the beginning. So if you have questions, concerns, please get them to us. And most of all, we thank you for coming out. We know that the roads are horrible, but we're really happy that you were here tonight.